Hello and welcome to an episode of Chaddy Issues podcast. It's Chaddy Issues because when I found myself being tested, I decided to. I mean, it was easy to blame someone else for their issues. I decided the best policy for me was to take accountability of whatever issues I may have had and attack them one by one. And I realised it's actually a good policy in how to move forward. And once you take care of your issues, you can definitely add value to someone else's life. Speaking of adding value to someone else's life, I wanted to do this to add value to anyone who found themselves being tested. And every test looks differently for everyone, but I'm big on family, I'm big on love, and I'm big on decency, or at least I'll do my best to follow that path. And this is about, the teenage boy who was against the world, and the teenage girl who was left out on her own. This is all about the grandparents, the good parents, the ones who are generally trying to get up there and make a difference, and the ones who have no voice. Today, I'll be, it's actually my privilege and an honour to have Louis Sambesvski, otherwise known as Sambo, as not my host today, but someone I'll actually be interviewing about his own personal journey. Louis and I started off being friends through our daughters, and to date, they're still very good friends. I just want to say this openly. The value that Louis brought to our lives is honestly, it's something that can't be scripted for us. I actually met him under different circumstances. It was both looking back. We both spoke about that moment, and we both were in our own personal situations. But even though I didn't know him, I felt a certain energy. Looking at him, you'd think, he doesn't have the loving heart of the child, but let me tell you, he does. And the greatest warriors do have the loving hearts of a child. To have him here today is my honour, and I genuinely believe this is a very, very unique situation that could have been looked a lot different if Louis' core belief systems weren't of a high standard. Interviewing someone with a complex and sensitive history like Sambo requires careful consideration and empathy. I need to balance the need for understanding his story, reflecting on his past actions, and assessing his current state and role as a parent. Louis, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, brother.
A pleasure. You're looking shredded. Looking really, really good. I'm envious. Yeah. And when I look at you and I look at my journey, it's funny, I'm doing now at 48 what I couldn't do at 28.
Yeah, so very true, mate. We don't always are a best version of ourselves, but it's quite amazing. You meet people and they just think that you've always been fit and healthy and looked after yourself, but that's not the case, as you know. Anybody can change their body with exercise, right, nutrition and things like that, and self-care, especially self-care. If you don't look after yourself, you're no good for anyone else, mate, let alone family.
And I think the buzz is doing it at 58. I mean, even before my journey, to see a 28-year-old is a dime a dozen, but to see a 48, 50, 55, it's a whole, it's the top of the pyramid in my opinion. It's someone with a completely different mindset than the average Joe, and that's something to be commended. I just want to strip this right back, because I know personally about how you grew up and stuff, but run us by your early memories, your early childhood, and what sort of environment you grew up in.
Yeah, look, in a nutshell, Chad grew up loving parents, came from Macedonia when I was about 2, older sister who was about 4.5, and younger brother who was only about 6 months. So I think Dad at that stage was probably around 23, 24 years of age with 3 kids. Quite bizarre when you think about it today. When I look at my own son, Jack, at 21. So I think to flee to come to another country is a massive step in itself. Grew up not having much, integrated with the Australian way of living. I guess, in sort of, so I'm born 69, I would have been at school at 74, we lived in Footscray. When primary school was fun, I was always quite active, as in interested in sport. But also on the other hand, was intrigued by people and wanting to know about people and talk a hell of a lot. And things haven't changed, down the track. So, got involved in football and cricket in summer and things like that. Had good friends growing up, very multicultural friends from, 10, 15 different countries. And we could all get along. It was very easy, very easy. Then, obviously, parents moved to St Albans probably halfway through high school. I still went to the same high school, finished that, so I'd catch train tram to Maribyrnong High. Had some good friends, stuck with the football. We didn't have much as a family, but we didn't need much, nor were we asking for much, to be fair. So, then started, played football, had a severe knee injury, meant to have an operation, but I thought at age 21 I'd just give that a miss and had enough. I was self-employed at the time, couldn't afford to be off work for 6 months, so I quit playing football and started a little bit of a journey on building myself back up, because you can live without an ACL. It's quite a common sports injury for footballers. Just started doing some weight training, building that area up of my knee. Started doing some short course triathlons, which were quite a challenge considering I swim like a rock.
Is that with or without cigarette?
With cigarettes, unfortunately.
That takes a certain character too. Yeah, not anyone can pull that off.
Yeah, look, it's quite an interesting scenario that I tell people, and I have no regrets on things that I've done or anything like that. And took up cigarette smoking on my own accord, not because my friends were doing it at high school. So, at the age of 25, when I went over to Europe, it was a common thing. Coffee, cigarettes, it was just natural to see everyone doing it in Europe.
You're lucky, Lou. I've got a saying, it's not what goes in your mouth, it's what comes out of your mouth that matters.
Yeah, but it's quite funny because even though I was super, super fit and healthy and things like that, it's I didn't feel restricted, to be honest with you. And even then, I knew I would train hard. I knew that it wasn't good for you, but I enjoyed it. So for me, I didn't stress out about it. And I'm not one of these people that stresses too much anyway. I'm not hurting anybody by doing it. Could have been worse. I could have been sitting on my ass overweight and a non-smoker. I actually preferred to be the other way around. And as I know today about my fitness journey and things like that, that it's quite interesting that someone that exercises and smokes cigarettes will actually outlive someone that doesn't exercise, that's overweight. And that's a fact. And it's quite interesting on critical thinking, who you listen to and what the facts are. And that was only something that I heard probably a year or two ago. And it's funny, back when I was 25, so 30 years ago, that's a thought that I had in my own mind. So it was like,
It's transpired. Yeah, it's transpired. So just listening to your background stuff, especially in particular home and early childhood, it's safe to assume, and to me, it looks, for someone that smiles like you and more importantly walked into a room, makes everyone smile, clearly there was no shortage of love back home.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Look, Dad wasn't a hard man, but the thing I take away from my childhood is that Mum was doing the ranting and raving and making all the verbal noise, where Dad's tone of voice was at just one level. And for me, that composure, it didn't matter whether he was furious about what we were doing or playing up as kids, that tone was just at one level. And you know what? Gained a lot of my respect, and the way that...
And it saved you later on in life on many occasions, I imagine.
Oh, look, absolutely. I mean, as you do growing up and things like that, we don't really need much, but there was a lot of love in the family, and there was a lot of love between my mother and father, even though my dad was a smoker and a drinker. My mum didn't drink and wasn't a smoker. But, yeah, they had disagreements, but always went to bed and woke up with a smile. And for me, you take away a lot from that. We're not going to agree on everything. It's an opinion. And I think a lot of people today think an opinion is not, don't take it as an opinion. And for me, I'm very opinionized about things. I don't speak about things that I don't have an opinion about and go into great lengths and just talk BS.
Clearly, it seems that your home had a healthy abundance to it. That's the way you come across, and no doubt, because I grew up in similar environment. I probably we've got a fair idea now of how what home was like. We got are you an entrepreneur as well? You were self-employed?
Yeah, look, pretty much self-employed most of my life. At 18, Dad, when I decided I didn't want to continue with school after year 12, Dad was like, okay, well, you need to be up in the morning, get the paper as you did back then, and get a job before the end of the week. And Dad helped me get a van, so I was driving around, racing around a little courier van at the age of 18. Dad put up the funds for it, paid him back, just went from there. I was a courier basically up until 25 when I took off to go overseas. Run a few businesses, have been involved in transport, also recycling. So,
Well done. Self-employed, went overseas, party like a rock star. Give me a few adjectives to describe Louis just before you met Nina. Rest in peace.
Look, first and foremost, I had 2 or 3 close friends that we would basically be inseparable, going out 3 or 4 times a week, and fit and healthy, looking like athletes, going out. We're talking about 1990 through to 95. Decided probably around my 24th birthday that I wanted to go overseas. I'd done a lot of short trips prior to that. Was going to go to Europe on a one-way ticket. Where I was going to go, how I was going to go, what I did know is I was going by myself. To my amazement, and I didn't give it a second thought, to my amazement, people's comments, that was, what do you mean you're going by yourself?
I'm going to remind you now, that mentality is very uncommon, in particular now, but it's also that mentality that people are scared of, but it's actually the mentality that will just about get you out of any situation that you ever find yourself in, because ultimately you're always on your own, aren't you?
Yeah, look, you are, but you're not. Me knowing myself as a person.
That's the power.
Yeah, me knowing myself as a person, I would give anybody the time of day, whether you're 75 or 5. So being in the unknown of Europe, having European background, heard some stories about Europe. I had no issues about going by myself, and I knew yes, I was leaving Australia by myself, but trust me, I wasn't by myself.
It's funny, I'm smirking and listening at the same time, because I'm sure I've told you, but as a 19-year-old, I broke up with my girlfriend. My cousin in Germany says, come over, we'll get you a job. There's women everywhere. So naturally, I quit my job and went. 3 months later, still no job, broke as hell. We ended up having to live in a refugee home when I was 19. But yeah, like that uncertainty, that shit, I'm a long way from home. But when you have a healthy voice in your head, it just keeps pushing you forward, doesn't it?
Look, I was very street smart, Chad. I was never in trouble when it came to violence and things like that. Growing up, I had a good select of friends. We would go out, obviously, as you do, not for fighting, mate. We were going out to pick up girls. So we would go to very exclusive places where there was 5 girls to 3 guys in the place, and they were very selective. People didn't like it, but you know what? Best thing about it, I mean, they wouldn't let a guy in with a collar, but yet I went in there half naked, and people were like, "How the hell are you letting this guy in?"
The power of a smile.
Yeah, well, exactly. So in that sense about being overseas, I was meeting people from day one, and I didn't feel the distance one bit or who I'm leaving behind. And to touch on things a bit more, it's much easier to look after yourself than have a group of people to look after. Like, for instance, friends. So you're traveling with 5 or 6 people. You're concerned about 5 or 6 people that are with you in the group. But being by yourself, I've only got to look after myself. I wasn't a big drinker. I wasn't a big illicit drugs taker, but had dabbled in most things, but was always in control of who I was, you know. So
Where'd that come from?
not really sure, Chad. I don't think I can put a finger on it, but the fact of the matter is I've always had self-confidence. So for me, I believe that going by what was happening amongst my friends, I had friends that were really shy, could not talk to a girl, would have to drink to get that confidence up. But problem with that is they can't put 2 words together.
Can I prompt you where it may have come from? You can agree and disagree. For me, most gangster moment I ever had with my dad is he trusts me. So he didn't wrap me up the cot in the wall. If there's a situation, he'd give me the look or a few words. So do you think that's the power, that's the stuff your dad instilled you? He gave you confidence. He didn't wrap you up. He treated you like a man earlier than what most parents would these days. Does that stuff ring a bell?
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, that also comes from the way they left their family, their parents, to come over here at that age. And you think to yourself, what's so tough about me at age 25, knowing what I know, to go on my own and explore the world, compared to rocking up with a suitcase and 3 young children and a wife and not knowing any language. So I think it comes down to, Chad, if you're thinking something's hard in your head, it's going to be difficult, and you're defeated before you've even tried it, rather than giving it a go. Because to me, success isn't about whether you fail or not. It's giving it 110%. If you're giving something 110% and it fails,
Which most people don't do.
as far as I'm concerned, that wasn't for you. But I'm super proud of you for giving it your all. But if you go in something half-assed at 70% and it doesn't work, what are you going to do? Well, you know, I could have gone that extra 10%, but fear got to you, right? I don't have fear when it comes to things like that. I think life in general, if we're going to walk around tiptoeing around, it's just not me. So
and it served you well. It's what you would. I mean, clearly it's got you to where you are now.
look, I haven't really changed much as a person. I could bump into people that I haven't seen for 30 or 40 years, and I still have friends that have known me since I was 5. And the most common thing I hear is you haven't changed a bit. I don't think we change our foundation of who we are as people. So what you see today, an older version of the person I was when I was young, and I used to cop that flack. Do you ever shut up? Do you talk in your sleep? You could talk underwater. But you know what? We're given a mouth for a reason, you know, and we can use it. And it's served me well, served me well in life.
So now we've got a better understanding about Louis and what you were like, your character, your mentality. Clearly, at some point in the trip, you met Nina.
Yep.
And so I just want to know what do you think Nina was attracted to, and what were you attracted to about Nina?
Okay, so I met Nina probably about 6 or 7 months into my travel. So basically I went through Asia, Bali for 3 weeks, Thailand 3 weeks, done a small Kentucky, got to London, did a Kentucky. Then I met a friend from Australia in London after my Kentucky, said, look, I'm going to Sweden. You want to tug along? And I said, if I've got somewhere to stay. My intentions were not to go to Scandinavia at that point. But then again, I had no plan, you know, so it was just go with the flow. It was a one-way. I brought a one-way ticket, and basically had said to friends and that, I'm buying a one-way ticket. If it runs out, I don't have a plan to come back. And I had enough money saved up that I didn't have to work, so I got to experience the whole thing. So anyway, it was quite a strange. We took off to Sweden, the smallest of country mining towns with about 15,000 people. By this stage, I'd had 3 months of summer, dark as the ace of spades, and people just standing there staring at you, this little town, which I later learnt that they don't get very many tourists in there. And the common question I was getting asked when I went out that night was, what are you doing here? And I said, referring to me being in Sweden, and I just said, I'm on holidays. No, but what are you doing here in this town? And I'm like, then would have to explain. So my first interaction with Nina was, we were out that night, and I didn't realise that there's cloakrooms in the nightclubs. And of course, we were up north in Sweden where it's bloody freezing cold. I had a jacket on, but a singlet underneath. I had no intentions of taking the jacket off. But as we got into the club, you have to put the jacket in the cloakroom. I've only got a singlet, and I'm dark, and I'm athletic and fit and healthy. And I remember Nina saying, walking past, word gets around quite quick. There's an Aussie here with an Aussie friend. And I can't recall her saying this, but this is only her recollection. She came past and said, "G'day, mate." I can't remember that. Maybe she was too drunk or anything like that. But ended up staying there for 3 weeks. So my first I saw Nina a few times when we were out. So
What was she like?
Danced a lot, quite out there. So it did remind me of a bit like of a small country town, which my cousins live in Shepparton. You go out, everyone knows each other. People are drinking and just having fun. So she was a fun person on the dance floor with her girlfriends and things like that. But a lot more reserved when we weren't out at the club. So a couple of times we caught up for coffee during the day and she was very shy and told me she was absolutely shitting herself to catch up with me. So,
Do you know what I really commend you on that gets my attention? Whenever I ask you about Nina, you always have a smile on your face.
oh, look,
Somehow, you've always, and that's a very powerful thing. And in fact, it's not. A lot of people couldn't manage that, but that's the ideal. That's the ideal, and I'm actually proud of you for doing that. And it's a testament to you.
yeah, well, I'm guessing, yeah. Well, obviously what's transpired since then, you're obviously talking about. So, look, we were married, actually we were together from 1994, basically until 2018. The interesting thing with Nina and I was she was visiting her parents in this small town for summer holidays, and I actually thought she was from there, but she'd only just recently moved to Gothenburg, which is Sweden's second biggest city. A friend of hers had passed her number on because we were travelling through Norway, and said, "Why don't you give her a buzz?" And I said, "Yeah, okay." So I took the number, and she said, "I think she'd like that. I think she likes you." Even at that stage, I thought she was a nice girl, met lots of nice girls in the town. And actually, probably one of my memorable experiences I had was in this little town of 15,000 people, and I travelled to some big cities through Europe. But I think it was just a down-to-earth nature of people in country towns. It's just different.
Different because it's
genuine.
Yeah.
There's no pretentious.
the nature and the nurture of a country town. It produces a better energy than the big smoke. You know, people smile more, which is a great start.
And I must admit, to people that haven't been to Sweden, the thing that I took away from being there and spending a bit of time there was the fact that we're very, very similar. Australians and Swedes are very similar. We get a lot of Swedes travel to Australia, and I think vice versa. We were very similar, but they're quite reserved. But once you approach a Swede, like they won't actually approach you and initiate conversation. But if you do, they're very, very warm and welcoming. Very warm and welcoming. So anyway, without dragging it too long, we ended up going to visit Nina. She lived in a small studio apartment with my friend from Melbourne. She was working as a nurse at the time, and we gave her a buzz. We were just going to catch up with her for a few drinks and a few of her friends, and I ended up staying there for 6 months.
Stayed 6 months, ended up getting married to three children, 2 boys and a beautiful girl, and you know what? They're flourishing and they're doing very well, and that's also a testament to you. And I just want to, can you share a bit? So obviously you've got married, moved over to Australia.
Yep.
Kept working. Can you share a bit about your life before? I don't want to use this word, but incarceration, and how life turned for you, and what that was like, and just talk us through,
Yeah.
the biggest test of your life in your own words.
Yeah, well, look, I think Nina was probably 22. I was 25 at the time. While we were living in Gothenburg, we were getting along really well. It was a very unconventional start to a relationship where we were actually living together straight away. And she was working some night shift. I wasn't working at the time. So there was a lot of time spent together in a place no bigger than the studio we're in at the moment. This was the apartment. Bed, sofa, separate little kitchenette. So, and it was easy. It was really easy. We got along great. We went out with some friends. I think after about 9 months, I continued traveling through America with a friend of mine where Nina stayed for work. I paid for her to come over to Australia about 9 months into the relationship, which she came and spent 6 months with us until her dad got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, flew her back home. So for about 2 years, there was this 6 months here, 6 months there relationship. So, if people want to say, I don't do long distance and things like that, I don't think you're going to get any more further distance than from Melbourne to Sweden. If you find the right person and things are easy, that distance becomes that distance. So we would be talking on the phone a lot. We were very different. Nina was a much quieter and reserved person. So we obviously balanced each other out. So the decision was made after her dad had passed. I went back to Sweden and lived there for about 2 or 3 years. And it was one miserable night. We were out having a few drinks, and we just had the conversation about where we wanted to settle down. So this was probably about a year and a half into the relationship. And she said, well, what do you think? All I gave her were the pros and cons. I'd have enough experience being in Sweden of what Sweden was like compared to what Australia was like. And ultimately, I left the decision up to Nina, to be fair. And she chose to move to Australia. Now, I don't know whether that was to get away from Sweden itself. She didn't have that many friends in Gothenburg, because that was a big enough move for her to actually move to the big smoke. So her life got turned basically, a 180. So we eventually moved back to Australia, in with mum and dad for a few months while I kicked my tenants out, moved into the house in St Albans. Things were going really well. We would talk about family. She had a fantastic relationship with her dad, very close with her dad. Not so much with her mum. Her mum had issues and had problems with alcohol and alcohol abuse.
So what was looking back, Lou, what got your attention? What was the first red flag?
Look, I wouldn't call it a red flag, Chad, but one thing Nina did mention to me when she would be having a few drinks. Now, mind you, at this stage, drinking wasn't an issue. I mean, we're talking about being in your late 20s, enjoying going out, having a few drinks. Her mentioning to me in regards to her being at a party when she was very young with people and things like that. And something happened at this party, but she'd always stop herself at a certain point. She knew the people that were there. We would revisit this when she wasn't drinking, but she didn't want to talk about it. I would be on the phone to her brother and people that knew her about what she's referring to. And mind you, she'd be very upset while she'd be talking about it. I did ask her the question, did someone touch you? Did someone sexually assault you? And she would just shut down. So so something traumatic happened at the age of 10. I can assure you on that. I never ever got to the bottom of it, but there was something there.
Lou, before my journey, I thought an alcoholic is just an alcoholic. I didn't know why. I thought they just love alcohol.
Yeah.
Or a drug addict is they just love drugs. Boy, have I learned. I now no longer judge. In fact, yesterday I was at Coles walking past and I gave them money to take and buy whatever the hell they want. So,
Look, a lot of people think, one thing I learned is that I had friends that had no handbrake when they drank, and I didn't see that any different with Nina. But what I learned later on was the fact that all it was a masking mechanism for the pain that you're dealing with, other issues. So,
in my opinion, you can't drink every day if you're if your thoughts between your head are healthy. I didn't realize if you're drinking every day, there's something there. You're trying to numb something.
yeah. Well, what are you going to do, Chad? Constantly drink 24/7? If it's there to numb the pain, right? The reality is that alcohol wears off and you come back to your reality, right? It's no different to someone taking illicit drugs. Illicit drugs isn't the problem. The reason is that the illicit drugs are blocking something else off. So we can all talk about the illicit.
Or what they pump out is an extension of what's going on inside their brain. The other thing is, everyone's be kind. Everyone's fighting a battle we don't know about.
Oh, look, as you touched on before, Chad, I look at homelessness and things like that and people down the street. Everyone's got a story to tell. I've spoken to many homeless people, and even in Chapel Street one day when I was doing night shift in my truck, mate, I just stopped, mate, just getting myself down at Lamb's, getting myself a kebab, and I see this guy, he's trying to scrummage some butts off the ground, and here I am with a packet and a half sitting in my truck. So I took the half pack, and as I walked out to go to across the thing, I said, take this.
Feels good, doesn't it?
Oh, look, the amazement on the guy's face. He goes, oh, one's fine. I said, take the whole packet. And I said to him, are you hungry? And he said, no. So I went and got something to eat, and he was still sitting there in the shop front. This is about 2 a.m. in the morning. So I jump in, and I'm scoffing through my kebab. This is so bizarre. And eating away as I'm watching this guy just sitting there. And I thought, I had no appetite, Chad. I really needed to go and talk to this guy. Sat down and spoke to him briefly. He was an ex-lawyer, and his life got turned upside down through a broken marriage, mate. So he wasn't some guy that you see down the side of the street. So everyone's got a story. And I remember telling the kids about that. So there's a reason why people, do you think that they want to be there?
Your story in particular, it would have broken most men. So, and this is why I want to bring you in.
Yep.
Because just run us by, you don't have to go into detail, just the gist of how things turned. No, really, you don't have to do specifics unless you want to, but how things turned, what reality looked like for you, and how you moved forward, and what's the message?
Okay. Obviously, we had kids came along, 3 kids, my 2 eldest are boys, and then my daughter came along. Nina was a fantastic mother. Something that we agreed on prior to having kids was the fact that she would be there until they went to primary school. So I was running my business, and this is something we discussed, and I followed through with my end of the bargain. Somewhere along the line, as the kids got older, Nina's drinking continued, and she was seeking help for her depression.
There's power in that too. A lot of people don't, and it really takes everyone out real quick.
Yeah, look, absolutely. So she was aware that something was not right with her. the thing that I question while you're seeing a psychologist is how true are you to the psychologist? Okay, and I think I mentioned to Nina once, can I come and sit in? It was a no-no, and I just thought to myself, you know what? If you're going to seek professional help, if you don't lay everything on the table, they're not going to guess whether you're lying or not. I mean, if they're smart enough, they might, but they're just there to listen. As I've learned now, psychologists, they're just there. They let you do the talking. They listen more than they talk. Look, it got to a point where I was working night shift. My recycling business had gone belly up through a ex-business partner, basically just siphoning money, and lost a multi-million-dollar business, which I'd worked pretty hard for about 3.5 years. And basically we were in a bit of a pickle where we had to sell the house. And that took a bit of a toll on Nina, but
It rains a pause, doesn't it?
yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, you're going from, running a multi-million-dollar business to having no funds at all. The only thing we had was a car and a roof over our head. So there's no funds coming in. And I won't go into details about the business side of it, but end up selling the house, moved to Santry Lakes while we were looking for something bigger. That we'd outgrown the house anyway. But again, selling the house wasn't the issue. It was about not having any money problems. And it's only a fucking house, So, people had their opinions about it, but I don't care about people's opinions when it comes to my family. I'm there to make decisions, and I'll stand by them. I was working nights, which suited the way the family was working. Nina continued to drink. It got to a point where her mental state deteriorated a fair bit, where I'd be getting phone calls while I was at work. Dad, we haven't eaten. Mum's passed out. Having to drive from the other side of town, drop everything while I'm doing my deliveries, race home, feed the kids, not waking Nina, make sure they're tucked into bed, and heading back off to work.
I got a fair idea how that feels when you're it.
Yeah.
You realise that you're on your own.
Yeah.
That's enough to take your soul, yeah, and especially when you're stretched as a father financially, emotionally.
Look, at that point, Chad, we weren't stretched financially, but the fact of the matter is I'm trying to get to work. And I don't know whether my kids are being fed. And Mum and Dad were a great help there, no questions asked. They would come, grab the kids, take them over, bath them, get them off to school. I was quite empathetic to Nina's situation. First and foremost, it's my wife. You're trying to help the person that you love, mother of the children. It's an understanding of mental health and what it is. That's the hardest thing to take a grip of.
The empathies come from the way you watched your father treat your mother.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
See, I'm glad that mental health sort of come out into this thing, because it is an illness. I used to think, fuck, snap out of it. But it's so hard coming from someone like myself to try and get a grip of feeling that bad that you want to take your life, that looking at your 3 beautiful kids and having a roof over your head and having a good life does not sway you in any way. So for me, I'm trying to put myself in that position. And what would I do to switch it? I know what I'd do to switch it. Probably give myself a couple of gangster slaps but you realise that it's not that, and you do a bit more research behind it. And it's a way of numbing things. And then, look, Chad, it got to, as we move forward a bit, moved back to Williamstown, and I stayed on at Santry Lakes for 3 more months to see the lease out. Nina moved back into Willie with the kids. And because I was working night shifts, so it worked out okay. I wasn't coming and going, even though I was there for dinner and everything like that.
Try to do the normal breakup stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't that. It was just that a house popped up. Nina went there. We didn't want to lose it. I was paying the lease anyway, so it was fine. And plus, it was another place for the kids to go to give Nina some breathing space for the weekends, So, but I thought that her being over there for 3 months, me being over there for 3 months, would actually make her a bit more responsible. But it just didn't work.
That doesn't work like that.
And it got to the point, Chad, basically, I think about 2 weeks prior to the lease running out, I did say to Nina, look, and this was the turning point for me was I was there for years and years and years to support Nina. Kids are growing up. Now they're seeing some things that are going to affect them. So for me, it's like, you are an adult. How do I weigh this up before it starts to affect my young children a long term on what they're seeing, what they're experiencing?
As in, you're talking about yourself or Nina?
No, talking about Nina.
Yeah.
And the things that they were seeing. And it came to a point where I said, okay, a couple of weeks I'll be into the house. If you continue on the path that you are, I will take the kids and move out with the kids so you can get some help, because we can't continue hurting the kids like this. Moved into the house in Willie, and then probably, I think, a few weeks after that, I was going to take the kids out for breakfast, and she said, kids aren't coming, they don't want to come. And I said, well, what do you mean? I spoke to Jack, and she said, I'm going to call the police. And I said, call the police for what?
Can you hold that thought for a sec? You described that Nina in a certain way. She wasn't an angry, bitter, resentful person.
No, there was
What got the police involved? What was a new force in her life
Look,
to go down that path?
I don't know what the initial thing to get police involved was, Chad, but what I figured out later on was the fact that I think me giving her an ultimatum of, if you continue drinking, I'll take the kids away. She saw that as, well, I'll take the first step and I'll get the police involved. And then that way Lou can be at arm's length and I can do what I like.
Would you agree that removing alcohol or threatening an alcoholic or drug addict with, I don't know, in your case, leaving the relationship or whatever, it's almost like removing a newborn baby from a mother?
Look, Chad, it wasn't leaving the relationship. It was
whatever you threatened with.
It was actually taking my kids out in an environment that was psychologically going to affect them. I was still there.
I get what you're doing. The question I'm asking is, when an alcoholic or drug addict is not ready, and you're giving them an ultimatum,
look, Chad,
it's almost like you're removing a newborn from a mother.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, what you realise is that they will pick substance over their own family. So
I've banged my head against the wall with that, trying to understand that. I or yourself didn't grow up in that environment, so we're never fully going to be entrenched in understanding their mentality or what's going through their head. I also can't teach anyone anything about it. I can only make people think what's out there. And so the police got involved. That changes the dynamics now. It changes everything.
Absolutely. Look, at first, to say it was a shock, I was like, call the police. What are you calling the police for? Now, I'm not aggressive or anything. I'm just taking the kids out for breakfast. So I'm just sitting on the porch. I said, I'm not leaving. And police came and they said, you need to come to the station. There's been an IVO taken out on you, which, to my surprise, never fucking heard of. So I get dragged to the Williamstown police station, and Nina had gone in 2 days prior and said that the reasons being why the IVO was taken out was that I was financially controlling in the relationship, and that I was aggressive and my kids were frightened of me. They were the terms of it. And I looked at it and I've gone, and he's trying to tell me the conditions of this IVO and what I'm allowed and what I'm not allowed to do. While this guy's lips are moving, Chad, I'm standing there thinking to myself, there's no way in hell. There's no way in hell that I'm not walking out of this station here and going to pick my kids up. I don't care what you've got. on a bit of paper.
And when you're a legit father,
I
that's exactly how you
Yeah,
think.
but Chad, the things I was accused of are not there. So therefore, why would I have a concern? My thought process is they're my fucking kids. I know my kids better than you do. And just because someone has said something or seen something doesn't mean that it's correct.
It's such a personal attack. Like, you can't describe the impact.
I wasn't offended by it, Chad, nor was I even upset about it. I was more upset about the police and the way they spoke to me and judged me.
That's what I mean. It's a personal attack on you, your character. Yeah.
I'm thinking you don't even know me, right? And I'm thinking financially controlling. Shit, man, I worked my ass off, and Nina would go on holidays with the kids. She wasn't restricted to what she can and can't spend money on because she has access to the same account as I did. It was absolutely comical. But trying to explain that to some officer,
Looking back, you don't, what would you advise someone in that position right there? Would you even argue with the guy? I wouldn't. Because
No.
nothing you do or say is going to change anything.
Chad, my advice is to anybody in this situation where we're up to in my journey here at the moment is if something, even life in general, people can say what they like about you, me, anybody. If it's not true, why on earth would you let it even pass through you? I say to my kids even today, Chad, people are going to talk. People are going to say things. If it's not true, just smile. I wouldn't even confront the person.
There's a saying, Lou, when the dog's barking at you, don't get on your knees and bark back.
No, exactly. So for me, whether it's male or female that's in that particular situation I was initially in that police station, there's a difference between it being factual and made up. And this was made up. Was I trying to understand, was Nina under the influence when she took this out, or what was going on?
The fact of the matter is you're ambushed, right? You've been ambushed. I know how it feels. Because this can go on and on. There's so many dynamics in what you've been through is a very, very unique story. You're ambushed. The emotions are running wild. The kids are no contact.
No contact at that stage, Chad. So what happens is I going, okay, well, if Nina doesn't want me to have contact with her, why are the kids on here? And then I was informed that I need to go to court to get them taken off the order. So for me, it's like, how quick can this happen? So I wasn't against the system. It was like, what do I need to do?
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
You know, so...
but you don't realise it's such... I mean, welcome to what your new world's now going to look like, isn't it?
Well, Chad, to be honest with you, at that stage, I had no idea, to be honest with you. So I've gone to court about 2 days later. It cost me $3,000, and I've had the kids taken off the order so I could see the kids. Because at that stage, I just wanted to see my kids and make sure that they were safe. And to think that keeping them safe from who? From their mother, who at the moment I'm trying to be taken out of the picture and be left with someone that's unstable. Okay? I don't like to talk ill of people, but this is the facts of the matter. Okay? So I'm picturing my kids being exposed to Nina drinking while I'm not in the picture. So for me, 1 hour is too long, let alone the 2 days to get them taken off the order. So anyway, I've done that. Judge has taken them off the order. And then the journey started with the IVOs, Chad. I was...
So you see how I'm laughing?
Yeah.
Because if I look back and reflect at all those negative emotions and that, I don't know, how would you describe it when it all comes pouring on you? And you know, as a father, you know inside you, you've done everything you can for those kids. Of course, you could always be a better father, but your mission statement is whatever it took, you're going to give them whatever they want, whenever they needed it, in terms of, you know, resources of father, clothing, shelter, love, you know, support systems. You know what you like. And then someone comes in, a stranger, we'll call it, and starts telling you, hey, this is what's going to happen.
In your family.
That's
dynamic.
Yeah,
Oh, Chad, look, don't get me wrong. I flipped my lid a few times in front of the police. I mean, look, I got accused of being a drug addict and things like that. In my own household, I had to actually leave the house and find another place to live. And
Find a camouflage on stage to see your kids.
oh, look, I mean, look,
The ghillie suit, you know, like the snipers, the ghillie suits, they call them.
Look, the funny thing is, I wasn't a drug addict. I wasn't taking drugs at the time. Yes, I dabbled in drugs when I was younger, but so did Nina. But yet, there was no mention of that. So for me, I was quite transparent with the police. And I said, you need to stop accusing me of being on drugs simply because my wife is telling you that. And I said, the Williamstown hospital is up the road.
But you know why Nina has to pin it on you, don't you? She's deflecting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I offered to have blood tests as randomly as they wanted, but it would never get to that.
See, like-
And that's frustrating though, Chad, to be accused of something. You're offering them basically a way to clear your name, but they wouldn't take that option. No. It's like saying, "Oh, you drunk? Well, breathalyze me." Do you know what I mean? Look, I did everything. Look, that journey of I breached a couple of things where Jack wanted his phone. Now, this is how comical it is, Chad. This was the first breach. Jack got a new phone for Christmas. He left his charger at my place. He said, "Dad, can you bring the charger around?" I was only living 2 blocks away. I knew at that stage that I couldn't drop the charger off at Nina's, so I got a friend and I texted him and I said, "Mike, can you drop the charger off at Nina's place in the letterbox for Jack?"
Still a breach.
It's a breach. Chad, I had the police knocking on my door. How is that even a threat? When my son has asked me to go and drop his charger off, I took the precautions of sending a friend there. Breach. For police at my door. I'm like, are you serious? Here's my son's text message. Nope, still a breach. And they're pulling out some paper. Things that you're not allowed to do, you can't get someone else to do. Anyway, long story short.
What else did you get charged with?
Stalking, harassment with a carriage. Look, it got to about 34 charges at one point. In the space of 11 months, I hadn't seen my kids for 11 months. When I mean I hadn't seen my kids for 11 months, I hadn't spent time with them for 11 months. Now, that 11 months felt like 11 years. No police, nobody was going to stop me from visually seeing that my kids were fine, getting to school, getting picked up from school. Didn't care about Nina, but just wanted to see that my kids were at school, attending school, hanging with their friends and this and that. You call it whatever you want. I don't really care. I'm the father. I'll do everything in my power. They didn't see me, right? So at the end of the day, I wanted to make sure that my kids were fine because the police were not making sure that my kids were fine. So I had to take those steps.
It's almost like communication is one way.
Oh, look, Chad. At the end of the day, a clinical psychologist did a report at the end of the day and said that the police's behaviour towards me in that period was overzealous and hard-handed.
So when you found yourself locked up, you spent six weeks, I believe?
Look, got locked up about 3 or 4 times, like over a weekend or a night, trying to plead my case to a bail justice. It got to a point where it was comical. And I just said, fuck the bail justice. And it was like they kept me there and then front the judge the next day and let you out on bail. The bizarre thing about this stuff, Chad, is that they can throw as many charges as they like on you and you're basically guilty until you face those charges and it gets to court. Now, it could be a 3-stage process, a fucking hearing, a mention, God knows what, and they hang over you. So I was basically treated as this person that the charges were on, okay, where it should be the other way around. But I knew at the end of the day I would have my time in court and they would have to prove these things, okay, and prove that they were correct with evidence, not just he say, she say. The longest stint I had was about 8 weeks.
In the end, the matter came before a judge, and what were the judge's words?
In the end, I spent 8 weeks at 2 different prisons, had to front the judge, represented myself, and 34 charges got dropped down to 2.
No conviction?
No conviction, and the judge turned around. I remember her name, Elena Popovich, she's a senior magistrate, looked at me and turned around and said, based on the 2 charges, Mrs. Sambesvski, that you're facing, which one of them, believe it or not, was the phone charger I pleaded guilty to, a phone charger dropping off in the letterbox and making a phone call. She said I shouldn't have spent a day in remand. Those 8 weeks cost me my job, my contract, loss of wages.
Lou, one of the many reasons you're here is the fact that I look at you and I know it would have broken most people, most men. Do you think it's fair just to throw someone up like that for like no physical violence whatsoever? Like financial abuse is hard to prove. You know, so is emotional abuse, but physical is pretty straightforward, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you think it's fair that men just get, you know, like, it's not easy to build a business up. It's not easy to have a family. Do you think it's fair what we go through?
Absolutely not. It was at that stage, we're talking about 2015, Chad, 16. It was, I don't think much has changed today. They view women and men totally different when it comes to the same charges. A woman can be on 34 of the charges that I was on, hanging over her head. She wouldn't even be in prison. She wouldn't even be in remand for a day.
Lou, your story is definitely unique, and again, the way you've handled it, I'm in awe. And in fact, today is still a role model on how to get through a lot of things. And without you, I probably wouldn't be sitting here. You've definitely been a big part of it, and I wanted to make your story and our story an offering to the world. When I was in, you know, the thick of it, I promised I'd be helping, I'd be giving back, and I didn't know it'd be podcast. I just thought I'd do some charity work or whatever. We're sitting here now, and as much as I don't want to be asking you this, if I can ask you very respectfully, can you tell us about Nina's passing?
Yeah. Look, as we touched on earlier, the stuff with the IVOs and everything like that, obviously I went through the family court issues, started to see the kids again. This part's the important part. Now, I hadn't seen my kids for 11 months. So as a mother or a father, but I want to refer more to as a father. When you love your kids, you haven't seen them for 11 months. You try and take away the anger, which I did, and made a promise to myself that my kids will see, didn't matter what was being said about me during that period, because I wasn't there to defend myself, but I did know what was being said about me and what I'd been accused of. I could have been a very angry person, Chad, but I chose to be the dad that my kids know. And I remember the first time we were at the play centre with supervision, cost me $300 a pop to see my own kids. Couldn't care about the money, anything like that. Fact of the matter was, Alice was only quite young, probably about 4 or 5 or 6 years old. Within 5 minutes, came and sat on my knee. It was normal dad. Two boys being a bit older, a bit more hesitant, right? So anyway, we went through the procedure of having the supervised visits and everything like that, and everything basically got back to normal, even on terms with Nina. I wasn't even angry with what Nina did.
I'm actually proud of you for that, because a lot of guys wouldn't let that go.
Look, Chad, to be honest with you, a couple of guys and close friends of mine at the time that were in the thick of it with me, and other people that had heard that journey said, I don't know how the fuck you didn't lose your shit, either assault police or... And I said, and the thing is, Chad, that's not me though. It's not me.
That's why we aligned, Lou, because we share those values.
Yeah, I'm not a violent person. I'm not aggressive. And I go back to what I was saying earlier about my dad being calm.
Even though you're not a violent person, let me tell you, Lou, there's a lot of good men sitting in jail that just made poor choices.
Absolutely, Chad. And that's the thing I realised about in jail is that, you know, that's right. Some people, everyone has a breaking point. Everyone has a breaking point. And the thing is, I will defend my family and to another extent, my friends to the hilt when they're in the right.
Well, you have.
That's right. I don't like injustice, and I'll speak up and call it out when it's there. I don't feel the unjust because of where I am today, because for me, my most important thing was my kids. Irrelevant of what Nina's thoughts were, but she came around in the end anyway and thought, you know what, I can't put this charade on any longer. And to her credit, actually apologised down the track after I'd seen the kids and everything like that. And we were on pretty good terms, Chad, because I'm a forgiving person and people make mistakes, and I knew the background of Nina and everything like that. And again, supportive, being supportive after all that where you could lose your shit. But what is that teaching my kids, right? And then it ended up kids not siding with me, but saying to their mum, Dad's his normal self. So you can't keep up a charade with kids when it doesn't matter what you say and you constantly say it.
So 3 things real truth: drugs, alcohol, and children.
Absolutely. And then, like I said, we were on great terms with Nina at the time. There was even talk about getting back together. I wasn't ready to visit that at this stage until she got some help. So I was quite happy with the arrangement we had with me seeing the kids and them staying with me. It was quite sufficient at the time. But once the kids wanted to spend some more time with me and said, "Oh, look, Dad, can we stay over an extra night?" And I said, "Absolutely." And Nina would try and put her foot down and say, "Oh, the court orders." And I said, "Well, the court orders actually say if we agree on something, they're not worth the paper it's written on, as long as we agree." So I said, "It's up to you how you want to look in front of your kids now. If they want to stay an extra night, you're going to have to break that to them, because I've already told them that you and I can make decisions. We're the parents. The government doesn't parent us, and the courts don't parent us, right?" So she didn't give in, but she was okay with that, because otherwise she won't be looked good upon.
What changed? If she's had an attitude change, what brought her down that path? What swayed her to start thinking differently about you?
Look, Chad, I think there was a lot of external noise and the people that Nina was hanging around with that made her make those choices. I knew my wife at the time better than she knew herself. She wouldn't know half the things to say and what to do unless it's coming from a third party. And as I learned down the track, that I know who the third parties are. And for me, why on earth would you bring it upon yourself because of your shitty lifestyle and start to advise and break up another family?
You were my strength. When I'd be having a whinge, I'd call you, look to you, and I'm sure others will prosper from your journey and my journey. This is all about giving back, and I'm just gonna say I want to leave with 2 things, and this just came to me now. There's a lot of healing what you and I are doing. We just talk openly. It's like we're sitting here in front of a few friends, but it's not about us anymore. It's about the world and what we want to leave behind, and our kids and their kids and whatever.
Look, the thing that you got to realise, Chad, which is quite important, even though Nina left us, absolutely devastating for the kids. As your world gets turned upside down with that sense, you go into, it's not survival mode, you just go into, you don't think, you go with your instincts. Not for once did I sit back and think, work, how am I going to do this? Got a funeral organised, I've got 3 kids here whose mum's just died in tragic circumstances. And we're talking about 8, 10 and 12-year-olds, okay? You go into protecting your kids and shielding their kids. What I did was I basically locked a lot of people out and just dealt with it internally. And we are very capable as human beings on being able to protect our kids. And I knew that as strong as I might have been through every situation in my life, I needed to be the strongest at that part. If I didn't have that upbringing and strength, I don't know what it is, I can see people caving in. But my thought was kids, 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 and kids. Like you and I spoke about when you were going through your journey, I said, Chad, as hurtful as things are going to be said about you, your sole focus needs to be kids, kids, and kids. If you solely focus on the kids and not what's been talked about.
But you also taught me something else, that I need to keep myself standing erect.
Absolutely.
Because I'm no good to them if I'm in a fragile state.
No, and you know, and that's when I got myself back into health and training. I hadn't done any sort of physical work for 15 years.
I just want to say this before I forget. Anyone can plant some sperm in a wet spot to be a dad, but you, my friend, are a father, and that's something that's earned. And now, through this, you know, we hope to be a father to the world and pass on this stuff, because unfortunately we live in a world there are no fathers to teach their boys this. I also want to say, I want to leave just on two quick notes, very powerful, and I know you'll take this the right way. For me, I currently have an interventional order against me, so I can't say too much about myself. So I'm doing my best to get the point across without crossing the line. I don't have enemies, Lou. I don't. People think I may be there. I refuse to have an enemy. And I know, over spending time with you the last couple of years, you don't have a bad word to say about Nina. And I know she knew she had a good man. And sometimes, mate, like my uncle says, some people can carry 2 watermelons, some people can carry 1. But I've never met her. But based on your words, I know she was a genuine person trying to do her best, because the way she treated her kids.
Absolutely.
My qualm is the pieces of shit that spread some sperm and spread their legs and call themselves mothers and fathers. That's where I'm going with this.
Yep.
You are now an example, right, of what people should look forward to, what people can do when they dig deep, and what your father and mother taught you at some point is exactly why you are where you are. And in my journey, I refuse to drop that baton.
Yeah.
When I look at you, I'll leave it with this. It's a powerful one for you, Lou. Life is, you need to understand 2 states, love and war. The journey you've been on has involved both love and war. Get comfortable with both as a kid growing up, because they're both going to come at you.
Absolutely.
Well played, Lou. I'm very proud of you, brother. It's not a game, but it's something I couldn't even describe. But in the end, when life exposes you, you'll be exposed.
Absolutely.
You've been exposed.
Thanks for having me, mate.
Well, that does. It's good. Who cares?
Was it all right?